Ethan Cade groaned as he dragged his boots through the copper sands of Vayora 7, muttering under his breath about interstellar bureaucrats and their fondness for last-minute emergencies. 2 hours late again, he said, scratching the back of his neck and glancing at the malfunctioning shuttle he was supposed to rescue. It sparkled in the sunlight like a tinfoil comet, half buried in dunes, with one thruster still sputtering little sparks as if it were trying to sneeze itself back to life. He squinted at the wreckage and wondered why, exactly, he had volunteered for this easy delivery job. Easy, he repeated, as if saying the word enough would convince the shuttle to cooperate. His fingers brushed the satchel at his side, the one packed with a toolkit that was about 50% useful, 40% duct tape, and 10% questionable optimism. He knelt beside the thruster, attempting to attach a diagnostic probe, only to have it bounce off the hull and land neatly in the sand. "Brilliant," he muttered. "Just brilliant." Then he noticed her. She sat cross-legged on the edge of the shattered fuselage, brushing copper dust from her long, elegant ears with the same care a human might give to a priceless painting. The sunlight caught her skin, giving it a faint, liquid shimmer, and her eyes, large, iridescent, impossibly expressive, locked onto his with what could have been amusement or mild horror. He wasn't sure which. "Human," she said, her voice melodic but with a teasing edge, "finally decided to join the party, I see." Yes," Ethan said, waving a hand vaguely at the wreckage. "I mean, of course I'm here. Rescue mission, totally on schedule." He swallowed and tried to remember if he had actually packed any lines of heroism. Probably not. You know, for emergencies, that sort of thing. She raised an eyebrow, or what he assumed was an eyebrow, and smiled. "Emergencies, yes. Humans, sometimes also emergencies." She leaned back on her hands, her long ears twitching like twin radars scanning for amusement. Ethan blinked. He wasn't sure if he had been insulted or complimented, but he decided that either way, a compliment would be easier to navigate. The shuttle let out a violent cough of sparks and smoke, and Ethan jumped back, waving his arms like a conductor trying to stop a runaway symphony. "Okay, that's my cue to look heroic," he said to no one in particular. He pulled out a gravity harness from his bag, only to realize he'd somehow attached the straps upside down. The harness flopped around like an overexcited cat, and he groaned, earning a soft laugh from her. "You humans and your clumsy appendages," she said, shaking her head. "I should take a moment to appreciate how chaotic your species can be." Ethan laughed a little nervously as he fumbled to correct the harness. "Clumsy, yes, but heroic too, sometimes, occasionally." He paused and added, "Mostly by accident." She rose to her feet, the movement graceful, almost like she was gliding over the sand. "Accidents are a fascinating approach to problem-solving," she said, her eyes twinkling. "I approve." "Proceed." They worked together, a strange duet of alien precision and human improvisation. Ethan handed tools with a lot of hopeful guessing, and she calibrated the shuttle's core with quiet efficiency, occasionally muttering comments that made him snort. "If humans were any slower, evolution would have scheduled a nap in the middle of birth," she said once, and Ethan nearly dropped a wrench from laughter. By the time the thrusters sputtered back to life with a final, triumphant hiss, both of them were covered in dust and sparks. Ethan wiped his forehead and grinned at her. "See, heroic, mostly intentional, I swear." Leora, he had memorized her name by now, tilted her head, ears flicking like twin antennas in amusement. "Mostly intentional," she repeated, then laughed in a sound that was oddly like wind chimes in zero gravity. "I like that human honesty. You are rare among your species." They paused, the shuttle humming behind them, the twin suns of Vayora 7 catching the edges of the wreckage in dazzling flares. Ethan felt the absurdity of the situation. The crashed shuttle, the glowing-eyed alien woman, his utter incompetence. And for a moment, it all became hilarious. He leaned against the hull, brushing dust off his hands. "You know," he said, "we make a good team, accidental heroism and all." Her ears twitched, and she leaned closer as if contemplating a secret. "Perhaps," she said, "but the universe is cruelly entertaining if it places humans in my way. I may have to rescue you next time." Ethan snorted, already imagining the chaos. "Please, I prefer the heroic side of things." And as they stood together amidst sparks, sand, and the gentle hum of the shuttle's restored engines, Ethan realized that the real adventure wasn't just surviving Vayora 7 hazards. It was figuring out how to navigate the impossible, beautiful, chaotic humor of being side by side with someone so utterly unlike anything he had ever known. Years from now, he would remember this day not for the danger, not for the sparks, but for the laughter echoing under alien suns and the strange, unspoken promise of friendship that could survive both gravity and common sense. And maybe, just maybe, something even more unexpected. Ethan sat in the cramped cockpit of his transport shuttle, staring at the star map that seemed to expand endlessly in front of him, and wondered if his life had become a cosmic sitcom he hadn't auditioned for. The shuttle hummed beneath his hands, thrumming like a contented cat, or a slightly annoyed alien cat if such a thing existed. He tried to stick to routine. Deliveries, light maintenance, occasionally convincing a rogue cargo drone not to launch itself into hyperspace prematurely. But every time he thought he could relax, he remembered Leora and the impossible brilliance of her being. Her message had arrived 3 weeks ago, a holographic ping that made his breakfast fly across the cabin when he fumbled to answer. Her image flickered, and there she was, ears elegantly angled, iridescent eyes sparkling like starlight, her tone laced with amusement. "Human," she said, "you appear remarkably unchanged. I feared you might have finally learned basic competence, but it seems the universe maintains a cruel sense of humor." Ethan had almost dropped the compad in retaliation. I've been busy," he said, waving one hand as if the action alone proved his point. "Space travel, cargo runs, trying not to electrocute myself on a daily basis." Her laugh echoed through the cabin, a sound that made him forget to breathe for a second. The eternal human struggle, surviving your own species' technology. I'm impressed nonetheless." Since that message, he had been thinking about her constantly, and not just in a "oh, she's cool" way. More like a "the universe might be trying to teach me how to function in the presence of a being who glows, can manipulate energy fields, and finds your clumsiness entertaining" way. The irony wasn't lost on him that she might be teaching him through humor. Ethan's shuttle lurched as a minor turbulence wave hit, and he swore under his breath, adjusting the controls. "Not now, universe. I haven't even had my morning coffee." Meanwhile, somewhere in the Andromeda fringe, Leora was preparing for her return. Her ship, a sleek, organic craft that seemed to flow rather than fly, pulsed softly, responding to her presence like a living creature. She tapped her long, delicate fingers against the control panel, murmuring instructions that caused the hull to shimmer, adapt, and align with hyperspace coordinates. She smiled at the thought of seeing Ethan again, imagining the expression he'd make when confronted with her technological marvels and her teasing grin. "I wonder if he still trips over everything," she mused, voice playful. "Some things are universal constants." Back on the shuttle, Ethan attempted a zero-gravity hair flip, a skill he had practiced to amuse himself and anyone unfortunate enough to be watching, only to miscalculate and spin halfway across the cabin. He crashed into the navigation console, which beeped indignantly. "Perfect," he muttered. "Just perfect. I look like a cosmic pancake." A sudden ping startled him. The comm interface lit up, and the familiar shimmer of her holographic form appeared. Leora's ears twitched in precise synchronization with her smile. "Cosmic pancake," she said, echoing his self-deprecating words with the kind of rhythm only an alien with impeccable timing could manage. "I see some things never change." Ethan laughed despite himself, his hands gripping the console to keep from spinning again. "Some habits are hard to break. Gravity is optional, dignity is not." Her laugh was melodic, bouncing off the metallic walls like starlight ricocheting across a void. "Optional dignity, an intriguing human concept. Perhaps I shall implement it when interacting with your species more frequently." As the weeks passed, Ethan found himself preparing for Leora's arrival in ways that were both practical and absurd. He stocked his shuttle with spare rations, emergency repair kits, and just in case, an anti-grav teapot she had once joked about wanting. He even programmed the navigation AI to perform interpretive dances at her arrival, reasoning that if humor was the way to connect, he might as well overcommit. Finally, hyperspace tremors indicated her approach. Ethan's pulse quickened, and he fumbled with the controls, trying to make the shuttle glide as elegantly as possible, knowing full well it would look like a drunken comet. The viewports shimmered as a ripple of light tore through the void, and there she was. Leora, stepping through the portal with her ears flicking in amusement, her ship exuding faint pulses of light as if laughing at his chaotic piloting. Ethan nearly fell out of his chair. "Welcome back," he said, voice cracking between awe and humor. "I may have prepared a little too much." She tilted her head, her eyes reflecting the stars, and the corners of her mouth curved into a grin that could disarm entire fleets. "I anticipated nothing less," she said. "Humans are predictable in the most delightfully absurd ways." Ethan managed to straighten himself, brushing off imaginary dust. "Predictably chaotic, yes, but effective sometimes." The two of them floated there, amid blinking consoles and the soft hum of engines, an unlikely pair united by cosmic chance, laughter, and an unspoken understanding that no matter how vast the universe, some connections could not be measured by distance, time, or logic. Humor, it seemed, might just be as powerful as hyperspace itself. And as Leora's ship docked, pulses of light mingling with the shuttle's engines, Ethan realized that the real adventure was not just in surviving the stars, but in navigating the absurd, thrilling, and utterly unpredictable journey of being side by side with someone who could laugh at the universe. And at him, without reservation. They were back together, the galaxy stretched before them, and for the first time, Ethan felt that the improbable chaos of life might actually be exactly what he had been waiting for. Ethan sat on the edge of his shuttle's command deck, spinning a gravity-stabilized coffee cup between his fingers, trying to appear composed while Leora's ship hovered just outside the docking bay, humming with an energy that seemed almost alive. Her long ears flicked with anticipation, eyes glowing faintly in synchronization with the ship's pulse. She had arrived, not just as a visitor, but as a catalyst, a reminder that some bonds stretched across light years and laughed at the rules of probability. "Human," she said through the comlink, voice teasing, "your shuttle is exactly as I expected, charmingly chaotic." "Charming," Ethan waved his hands vaguely. "I was going for heroic, or at least functional, possibly entertaining." Her laughter bubbled through the cabin, making the grav-stabilized coffee ripple dangerously. "You are entertaining," she said, "in a way that might be considered endearing if humans had a consistent sense of timing." Ethan grinned, suddenly aware of how much he had grown in the time since they first met. He no longer panicked at sparks or strange energy pulses. He had learned to improvise, to trust instinct, and most importantly, to embrace the absurdity of the universe instead of fighting it. Leora had shown him that chaos could be a friend, that humor could bridge impossible distances, and that connections did not always obey logic or gravity. "Docking sequence is all yours," Ethan said, gesturing vaguely toward the controls, though he knew she didn't need them. Leora's ship pulsed in response, as if chuckling at his theatrics. "Try not to obliterate the hull this time, please." "Obliteration is hardly an option," she replied, gliding through the docking bay with precise elegance. "Although I appreciate the human concern for dramatic entrances." The ships latched together with a soft hum, the interlocking systems synchronizing in a dance of energy fields that would have baffled any engineer, but looked entirely natural under her guidance. Ethan watched her glide down the ramp, her presence filling the cabin with a warmth that defied physics. Her eyes scanned the interior, taking in his carefully absurd preparations. Zero-gravity tea dispensers, emergency rations stacked in precarious towers, and a small holographic projector programmed to display interpretive dances whenever he entered the cockpit. "You really went all out," she said, raising an eyebrow, or what he assumed was an eyebrow, her ears twitching with amusement. "I might have overcommitted," Ethan admitted with a grin. "Or maybe I'm just trying to impress the galaxy's most fascinating alien." Her laugh was soft, musical, and entirely disarming. "Fascinating, yes, impressive, potentially." She stepped closer, the faint shimmer of her skin catching the lights in playful bursts. "I see the years apart have not tamed your human charm." Ethan felt his cheeks warm, an emotion that made him oddly pleased despite his age, experience, and supposed maturity. "And you," he said, "have not changed a bit, except, glowing and possibly more dangerous." "Danger is subjective," she replied, eyes twinkling. "I find humans amusing because they survive so many catastrophes and still think themselves in control." Their laughter intertwined, echoing across the ship as the stars outside spun in silent testimony. For a moment they floated in a shared stillness, the kind that only comes when two beings understand each other across the impossible gulf of species, time, and space. Ethan realized that he no longer needed heroics to define him. The real growth had been in his willingness to embrace uncertainty, to laugh at failure, and to accept that the universe might conspire in ways that made no sense until you stepped into the chaos. Leora's return wasn't just about gratitude, it was an invitation, a shared adventure, a promise that life could be extraordinary when you opened yourself to the unpredictable. "Ready," she asked, her hand brushing against the console as if to coax it to life. Ethan nodded. Ready, but if we encounter any more cosmic pancakes, I'm holding you accountable. Her ears twitched in mock offense. I would never, she said, though the smirk on her lips suggested otherwise. Together, they activated the ship, slipping through the docking bay and into hyperspace. The stars stretched into brilliant lines, bending around them as though the universe itself conspired to create a tunnel of light just for this reunion. Leora's ship pulsed beside his, perfectly synchronized yet separate, two travelers sharing a path that neither logic nor distance could sever. They shared jokes, recalibrated minor gravity anomalies for fun, and debated whose piloting was more heroically inefficient. Every laugh, every teasing glance strengthened the bond between them. One that had begun in disaster, flourished across years, and now existed as a partnership neither fully understood but both embraced. By the time the next star system blinked into view, Ethan knew something had changed irrevocably inside him. He was no longer just a man navigating empty space. He was someone capable of trust, courage, and unexpected love. He glanced at Leora, ears flicking in playful rhythm with his heartbeat, and realized that the universe had given him a gift beyond explanation. Companionship that spanned worlds, laughter that bridged species, and the certainty that together they could face anything. And as the two ships sailed side by side toward uncharted systems, Ethan laughed, because for the first time the universe felt not like a series of problems to survive, but a canvas of endless possibilities. Chaotic, brilliant, and infinitely funny, with Leora at his side.